Hey, this is Zaklog the Great. So there is this idea I've heard a few times. It's called Hanlon's razor, which is do not attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. And the idea, to break that down a little further, to pull that out, is that do not assume that some particular act was done deliberately out of ill will, when it is possible that what you're seeing could have been the result of foolishness or incompetence or inattentiveness. Um, and it's probably a good rule. If we paid more attention to that, we could probably have a rather friendlier, more amicable society. At the same time, there are some things which simply cannot be adequately explained by incompetence, and there are some things, some cases where you have to say, this appears to be malice. And the state of, definitely the U.S. educational system is one of those cases. And, I was just reminded of this yesterday. Yesterday, I happened across a song by the band Sabaton. For those of you not familiar with them, I am sorry. You should look them up immediately. Sabaton is a Swedish heavy metal band, and they do songs mostly, I'm not sure if it's entirely, but as a rule, their songs are based on real historical battles, real historical war heroes. They go all the way back to, of course, the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae, um, and all the way forward to the most recent things I've heard have been out of World War II. And I heard a song by them, and it was "Resist and Bite" is the name of the song. And I looked up a little bit about the context about who this is, who was involved in this story, and yet again, I in sheer frustration, all I could think is, I was in public education for 12 years, and I did undergraduate college for 4 more years after that, and so I had you know probably 2 semesters of history classes there. I never once heard of the chasseur ardenne, uh, the subject of resist and bite. It's French through Belgium. I'm probably mispronouncing it horribly. I apologize for that. Um, but I never once heard of the Chasseur Ardenne or Audie Murphy, who was the most decorated, U.S. soldier of World War II. Got pretty much every honor, pretty much every medal we could give, plus a couple from other Allied governments. Never heard of him. Never heard of him. The siege of Vienna in 1683, and the charge of the winged hussars. Never heard of it. Why? Why did none of our history teachers think to mention any of this? I, it's the people who create the history textbooks and select the curriculum for our schools. Why did they not cover any of this? Why had I never heard of this before? It's, I mean, there's a common perception among young people that history is boring and stupid. A lot of them will tend to think. No, it's fascinating. It's awesome. But, look at how they're taught. You want to get a young man, you want to get a teenage boy interested in history. It's not that hard. You teach him, you tell him about, you know, amazing badasses in these, horrific battles and these deeds of courage and self-sacrifice. And guess what? They'll want to hear more. And you tell them about, the Chasseurs Ardennes, the Belgian light infantry who were, charged to defend the Ardennes forest against the German invasion. And they fought so dedicatedly and so cleverly. In one case, a unit of them were captured. It was just 40 men, and by the way they fought and their brilliance and courage and dedication, the Germans who captured them had assumed there were hundreds, and they said, "Well, where are the rest of them?" The guy laughed in their faces and said, "No, it's us. It's just us." Tell a teenage boy about this. You've got his attention, especially if that's part of his history, if that's his people. And then, after you tell him about this, then you have his attention. You can tell him about, how this whole thing started. And you do that, what are the causes? Why were people fighting? Where did this whole thing start? Where did it lead? You do that a few times, you've got a very sound, knowledge of history. But no, no. And it's, having seen this happen with myself several times. Like I said, I heard about Sabaton, first heard of them somewhere around a year ago. And several times I hear one of their songs and I think, okay, what's going on here? What's happening? Who are these people? And I go and I look them up and I learn for myself, and it is fascinating. And having done this myself several times, I have to ask, why isn't this being done? Why is the way history is taught in our schools so bled dry and pussified? Is incompetence a sufficient explanation? I kind of doubt it. It it's too bad. It's too much off target. But malice might be. You teach a young man this. You tell him about these heroes. You tell him about these battles. You tell him who fought and where and why and what it looked like. And you give him the context, and he knows who he is, and he has something to fight for. But what if you don't want that young man to know who he is? What if you don't want him to have anything to fight for? What if you want him to lay down and die as his people are being destroyed around him? You teach him that history is a boring pile of facts and dates and people arguing over things that don't matter to him using language he can barely understand. People in charge, it's the people making these decisions. They do not mean us well. And yeah, for yourself, go out there, learn, find out who you are, where you came from, what your people have accomplished. And if you are a parent, your kid's education is not the school's responsibility. It's yours. And you need to take care and you need to take charge, take an interest, and make sure that they know who they are and where they come from and why it matters. God be with you.